Contentious day in a D.C. federal courtroom as a judge told the Department of Justice it will face consequences if he finds probable cause that they deliberately defied his March 15th order. That order was to return the 2 flights filled with deportees to the United States. Instead, they ended up in a maximum security prison in El Salvador. ABC's Mireya Villarreal has the latest.
Judge James Boasberg calling out the Department of Justice at a hearing today, accusing them of acting in bad faith when it comes to the legality of those flights full of migrants dropped off in El Salvador, scolding them in open court, saying, "You really believed everything you did that day was legal and could survive a court challenge. I can't believe you ever would have operated in the way you did." This video from El Salvador is less than 3 weeks old. The images now serving as a painful proof of life for so many families.
No sale ni bajando el avión, ni no sale que le están cortando el cabello, ni nada de eso. Pero en una foto, en una imagen, le hicimos zoom y lo pudimos identificar. Llorar, llorar y llorar. Ni a los más asesinos los han tratado así.
After crossing into the U.S. in December of 2023, Sebastian's brother, Francisco Garcia Cacique, surrendered to authorities. While working on his asylum case, Sebastian tells us an immigration judge allowed his brother to stay in the country with an ankle monitor. During a recent routine check-in with immigration officials in Dallas, he was detained and eventually ended up in one of El Salvador's most notorious prisons, Sicot.
Tiene absolutamente nada. Lo único que tiene es que es de Maracay, Estado de Aragua y tiene tatuajes. Es lo único que tiene, porque no suben las fotos de ellos y explican cuál es el delito, qué delito cometieron. El único delito que cometieron que yo reconozco es que pasó ilegalmente a Estados Unidos.
Cacique and more than 250 deported migrants are now at the center of a contentious legal battle playing out in Judge James Boasberg's courtroom.
But they're in international waters, already on the way south, close to landing. You know what? We did what we had to do. Remove terrorists, significant public safety threats from the United States.
This sentiment shared by border czar Tom Homan on Fox News just days after the deportation flights landed in El Salvador is at the crux of the administration's case. The Trump administration alleging all these men belong to a dangerous Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua, giving them the right to use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to deport the group with little to no due process.
We're not going to reveal the operational details of a counterterrorism operation for quite obvious reasons. We're trying to combat terrorism here in the United States of America.
Some family members telling ABC News their loved ones did not have criminal records in the U.S. or their home countries.
Tengo sus antecedentes penales internacionales apostillados y todo, como que él no tiene absolutamente nada, solamente sus tatuajes son porque él es barbero, tiene 13 años estudiando la barbería y le gusta el arte. Pero de lo contrario no sé absolutamente más nada, amiga.
This sworn declaration from a top ICE official filed in Judge Boasberg's court confirming the claims. And this document saying DHS immigration agents were using something called the Alien Enemies Validation Guide as a checklist to identify Tren de Aragua gang members.
This is a wartime measure that the president is trying to use during peacetime. It's supposed to be used only when we are in a war with another country. He is claiming that we are in a war with a gang. Obviously, we are not really at war with a gang.
The ACLU asked Judge Boasberg to pause any deportations using the Alien Enemies Act, which he did on March 15th while the flights were still in the air and heading towards El Salvador. And yet, the men still ended up here, the government claiming the planes were over international waters and unable to turn around.
We have real concerns that the government violated his order by not turning the planes around and bringing the people back. What we are saying is that the planes were still in the air or on the ground in El Salvador, and the U.S. still had custody over these individuals, so could have brought them back.
Boasberg appearing to think similarly to the ACLU, suggesting he might order Trump administration officials to testify under oath about the deportations. flipping the script on the DOJ and asking attorney Drew Ensign how should he determine who to potentially hold in contempt for violating his order. While Ensign said he was not prepared to give specific answers, he might have to once a final decision is likely delivered sometime next week. And while this case continues, another federal judge in Boston blocked the government from deporting migrants to countries other than their own. Both cases will likely end up in an appeals court, with the administration vowing to take this to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary.